Welcome, everyone. We're at the One Apollo studio in Santa Ana, California. Today, I'm joined by my very good friend, Andrew Pfeifer. And Andrew is the owner of CNBS Solutions. They are a company that specializes in design and manufacturing for clients. And besides that, he's a great friend of mine for many, many years. We met in Hong Kong, and there's a lot of stories that go along with it. But I'll let Andrew introduce himself a little bit and take it away.
I'm a businessman. I've been doing business mostly out of China for 25 years now.
Yeah,
It's been a while. I keep aging myself. But I was born and raised in Wisconsin. Went to school there, and I just kind of slid over to China. But I've been involved in a lot of different products. Some military applications. I've done parts for the U.S. Navy, for the Army, for automotive cars. At one point, I think every Chrysler car in North America, glove box switch lights assemblies were made by me. Also,
Wow.
every door hinge and latch in the world for the Jeep Wrangler cars, the JK,
Right.
was made by me. Uh, the indoor metal strap, outdoor aluminum strap, city bike in New York, fork frame, the electronics in there. I redesigned the stepper motor that actuates the flag, locks the bike in there. And this is the best part. If you go into New York and you see a rusty base,
Yeah.
that was made in Canada.
Okay.
Anything that's not rusting is mine. I made that in China.
Nice.
And really, it's only because we did a different coating and we guaranteed it for 10 years. So if it rusts, I'm in trouble. So,
Okay, got it.
but
Wow.
I'm involved in a lot of design projects, design work. Get my hands involved in a lot of different areas, ranging from sanitation control to weapons fire detection, security systems, to automotive. I've got a lot of interest, and keep on moving.
Right. I've known you for a long time, and you are a jack of all trades. You've done so many different projects. I've known you for however long, and it's very impressive resume and things that you've done. But I want to start from the beginning. Like, how did you get into engineering in the first place? Like, what inspired you to be an engineer and go into that field?
I always wanted to take things apart and figure out how they work. I mean, I like the engineering technical side, and to be fair, when I was going through school, I think that was my lazy way out because I was really good at math, and that was just easy.
Right.
So I just kind of slipped into engineering.
Well, I think that really paid off because you've done really well for yourself. But I know that you spent a lot of time in China. Go through how that happened and what initially took you to China in the first place.
Well, that's back in 1999. I was working for a switching power supply company in Wisconsin, and I actually already wanted to travel. I'd spent actually the last year and a half previous to that getting my top security clearance to work for the U.S. government, diplomatic security. Um, at that time, this was August. I was not aware that I had been approved for my security clearance yet. Hadn't got a call, and I was sitting in a meeting in Wisconsin. I was the most junior person in the entire company that wasn't direct labor.
Right.
And I just so happened to be in the meeting room. I was sitting on the far end, away from everybody. And the president was asked a question like, "Who can we send over to set up this transformer line?" And transformers are there's lots of different types of transformers. So basically, you just think about a magnetic core with wires wound around it. That's a transformer.
Hmm.
And there's lots of different types there, but ours are specifically used on power applications for switching power supplies to convert one type of electricity to another type of electricity, AC DC, DC AC, or DC to DC direct. Uh, I raised my hand, said I'll do it,
Right.
and everybody else, in Wisconsin back then, they really thought Chinese were all on bicycles with khaki pants and looks, and smelled bad. I mean,
Okay.
and spoke like Bruce Lee on a dubbed over Chinese movie, right? So I got the nod. I didn't know what I was doing, so I went on the second shift on my own and started winding transformers with a second shift crew for a couple of weeks, and they sent me over.
Wow.
And that's kind of how I ended up over in China.
And that was in the early 2000s, right?
That was 1999.
1999.
Yeah.
My dad told me stories. He went before even China opened up back in the 80s. And at that time, he would say you would be given a minder to follow you, and you would have these coupons to buy things with. And he was telling me that he was visiting a factory because he was going to do business with them. And they told me the factory workers were having rats in gutters, and they would eat them.
So it's changed a lot from the 80s to the 90s.
Okay, I was asking if that was that the same was the same experience when you went over there, but
No,
I
but
assume
so
they
at the end of the 90s, that was so 80s, end of the 80s where they start opening up. They set up those 5 original economic zones,
right,
and then by the end of the 90s, they were a full.
very booming. Already.
They're a communist country, but you wouldn't know it if you're hanging out there. Like there's clubs everywhere. People are going out to bars and clubs
Right.
until 6 in the morning every single night of the week. Every night of the week, and every place is packed out. Like, there's money being thrown around all over the place. If you told them they were oppressed people, like they'd be sitting there drinking their champagne bottles, looking at you like you're crazy.
Yeah, right. I heard it was good times back then, and when I went, it was 2011, 2012, and it was still busy. The bars were lively. People were partying every day if you went out.
It already backed off though, because you had that 2008 financial crisis.
Right, so it died down a bit.
Knocked out a lot of companies.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I mean, of course, not everybody, but it still toned things back a little bit.
Yeah.
Up until then, things were just absolutely booming, and things calmed down a little bit between there. But it still was obviously a lot of stuff going on wherever you go. But then after the 2010, after that 2008 bust, you kind of during the week things kind of slowed up a bit, and then you had more like the Western weekends are busy, weekdays are more quiet.
Got it.
But you still had that in the big cities, but less.
Right. Well, I still experienced it in Shenzhen when I went. It was busy in the weekdays.
That's a big city.
Yeah, that's a big city.
That's
but now, when I went back last year, it was not like that whatsoever. It was
because people are hurting. There's industrial production is down.
Mm-hmm.
People have less money. Like, they're not have
even on the weekends. It was kind of quiet. I was shocked. But yeah, that makes sense.
They don't have the ability to spend money,
and obviously the property value dropping so much.
And also you have to understand Asian culture. Like if you're a big boss, you can't go out there and then look poor and have buy one drink at a time.
Yeah,
because people will be watching you. Oh, what happened? Because they're gonna lose face.
Where's your big wad of
so
cash?
They're just not gonna go out.
Right. Yeah.
They're not
because it's bad for their image. So now
right.
might as well not.
Right.
That's.
So these are guys are going out. They're sitting down at a table and they're dropping 10 grand on a champagne rack.
Yeah.
They got a whole rack of champagne bottles coming. They don't even drink it, but they got it there because they can spend the money.
So they can be seen.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen that in the past, and I always thought that was quite extravagant, but it's just part of the culture, I assume. So you went there, and what did you enjoy it? Was there any culture shock? Like, you were not familiar with China at the time, I assume.
Not at all. I couldn't speak a word of Chinese.
Okay.
So I mean, I look a little Asian because my mother's Japanese.
Right.
So, but like to Chinese people, I was basically just a big white guy.
Yeah, you're so
I look so different than them. Like there's not a second they thought I was Chinese.
Right, you're just no matter what, just a foreigner to them, and
so it was. I guess it was kind of isolated culture shock because the first couple of years I had 2 ladies that followed me everywhere. They came to work. They went to a bar if I went drinking. They went to a club if I went clubbing with me, and they spoke for me of everything. So I didn't really integrate very well the first couple of years because I just had 2 translators, just hanging out with me constantly wherever I went. I think the biggest thing I missed was just coffee. Couldn't get any good coffee. That'd be an entire
that was before
weekend.
Starbucks, I assume.
Yeah, that'd be an entire weekend day trip going over to Macau or Hong Kong. I actually went over to Macau to find there's a little Indian restaurant I'd walk over to, and then I'd go find a Starbucks, the only Starbucks, and then get a coffee, and then I'd make my way back over to China.
Got it. That's crazy. I couldn't imagine because when I went back in the 10 years ago, it was all Starbucks. It was a craze.
Yeah, couldn't
imagine.
I don't recall which company got the contract, but it was a single monopoly, and they got a contract for it, and they opened up thousands of them everywhere. Like every city suddenly, practically overnight, had like 6-7 Starbucks.
Yeah,
everywhere. It's like even Zhuhai, considered like a small city, or actually they called it a village, even though it had like a few million people. They had there was like 10, 15 Starbucks in Zhuhai alone. So.
That's crazy. And then KFC and McDonald's showed up, and they did really well.
I think they were always there.
Oh, they were there before?
They were there when I showed up.
Oh, okay. Well, they've been
really
there
for a while.
Like, there's a lot of good, big Western chains that
it's funny. First
in China.
First, I don't know, first decade as I was working back and forth to China. I think McDonald's is like where like the poor people go for like a nice dinner weekend. They would come in there from the country. You see them going there eating McDonald's and stuff.
Yeah,
And it was like
that's
a big
funny.
deal, like eating this nice Western food.
Oh, and it's all processed.
Yeah, it's all processed. But then I'm telling them, like, back home, I won't eat McDonald's because it's
Yeah,
terrible.
I don't think I've eaten McDonald's since I left China.
Yeah, I haven't.
It's just
Yeah,
not.
neither have
But
I.
when I go back, I'll get it because it's like the closest thing I can get to a Western breakfast.
Yeah, I don't know. I was still with McDonald's.
I thought I think it's better there. To be honest, KFC tastes amazing in China, but that's
Actually, KFC tastes really good in China. Like,
yeah.
I
I don't
actually
know
think
why.
about it sometimes. I don't know what
Maybe
they're
they
putting in it.
process it better.
It's
More
got to be the
chemicals.
grease or something they cook
Yeah,
in it.
maybe.
When KFC in China
More
tastes
MSG.
good.
Yeah. But what was your favorite Chinese dish, or like what would you eat? And that what were like that kind of shocked you when you
It
first got
shocked me.
there? Yeah.
And the only thing that, well, so I had a couple things. So they have this thing called dim sum. It's a Cantonese food,
Right.
and they have all these little dishes, and they have these, and they're all broken up in little buns and
Mm-hmm.
wraps and stuff, and they have paper attached to the bottom of every one of them. No one told me I had paper on it, so I think I spent 6 months eating paper before someone paid attention,
Right.
noticed I was popping the whole thing with all the paper in there. But it tasted okay, but
Yeah.
I was just consuming a lot of paper for a while. And
At least it won't kill you. That's a good side of
yeah,
it. It's just
yeah.
a
And
little
then
mistake.
I did have somebody sneak a dog into my dish one time, and that was upsetting. And I could taste it right away, too.
Really?
I was definitely like, what is this? This is wrong.
Damn.
And
That's
they're like,
crazy.
hee, it's a dog.
It's like, yeah, American, stupid American ate dog.
Yeah.
Man, that's crazy. But all right, well, now that you're in China, how did you go from working for this Wisconsin company to opening CNBS and doing what you do now?
Well, it's interesting because right when I went over there, I started traveling. It was also where we had our big .com boom, and one of the customers we were working with is a company called Linux. It was the largest rising stock on Nasdaq, I think, in the history of Nasdaq at that time, and that was one of our customers. And so when I went over there, that was one of the customers we're building and set up the factory to manufacture for and produce. And then shortly after, everything started crashing, and the company that I was working for at the time in the U.S. bankrupted.
Okay.
So I'm not even sure how they kept me on the books. I think I got paid off the books for a little while they're trying to figure things out. But when they bankrupted, the current general manager of the place, this guy from Hong Kong, told everybody that by the time Chinese New Year's rolled around, this is December, Chinese New Year's in February, and he said everyone will be out of a job, and he left. Just left. And so he's the one that actually set up the established company and set it up. It's interesting, the core group people that were in the factory, we actually had to smuggle them from another city, from Shenzhen over to Zhuhai, because that time the special economic zones had you had to have passports. Actually, one time coming up to the special economic zone, I had machine guns at the border pulled on me, pointed at me just because I didn't pull out my passport fast enough.
So you need papers.
They were very strict for. It was harder for Chinese to cross from province to province back then than to exit the country and enter another country.
Wow.
Because they controlled these areas so tightly because the jobs were such high demand at that time, because that was just when things started industrialized.
Yeah, yeah. Everyone's coming from the countryside to work, get good paying jobs.
We were working originally with a company as a supplier up in Shenzhen, and in order to set up the factory, we stole some of the workers, but we had to put them. We basically piled them in the back of a big truck, put a wall up there so they couldn't be seen, and smuggle them across the border, and that was our core group that set up the actual factory there.
Oh wow.
So anyway, that group was set up by this Hong Kong guy, and he ran away. Told them all they're out of a job. So the president calls me and it's like, hey, would you like to take over as general manager? I'm like, not even 23 at that time, and I'm like, sure, why not? So I bring them all over to my little apartment that I had in China, and told them all, trust me, we'll get through it, and they did. We didn't lose a single person. But it was a rough like 6 to 8 months. Like,
I bet.
During the transition.
Yeah, a lot of explanations, a lot of uncertainties, and everything.
Well, in order for the company on the U.S. side, it was called Converter Electronics at the time. They changed their name to CCI Power Supplies.
Okay.
And for them to get through the bankruptcy, they needed a pipeline of product shipped there. So I had to convince every supplier to keep supplying us with resistors, components and stuff to build everything and continue shipping, even though we weren't paying them. And then when the bankruptcy was complete, they reestablished a new company. Then they like, right, we're ready to go. Then I had to go back and say, look, we can't pay you, but here's a 5-year payment plan. We'll
Yeah.
pay it off, and then everything else we'll pay in advance for
Right.
cash. And everyone got on board. I mean, it was really uncomfortable because I was like basically a mouthpiece. But they all trusted me. I was the one. I was like the kid that said, "Yeah, we'll do this," and then I'm like, "We're actually gonna do this," and it it sucked, but it had to be done in order for the place to survive, and we made it happen. And all those people that were there were still there. In fact, a couple of engineers I hired back then in early, like late '99, 2000, they still work for me.
Oh.
Of course, it's a different company now, but they
Yeah.
stayed with me through thick and thin over the past 2.5 decades.
Yeah. That's wild. So how did that transition to CNBS over time?
Well, during that same time where like we thought everything was going to go under, I had this company in California contacting this guy, Jess Foster. I'm forgetting how he got a hold of me. I think I had a LinkedIn page set up, and he didn't offer me a job. He offered me a partnership to set up a sourcing company. I would run the technical side, quality inspection, control, and stuff in China, and then he ran sales on the U.S. side. Um, I said yes, and then it seemed like it was going good, so I went back to the president and said, "Hey, I want to run my own business." And he was very skeptical, and he actually gave me an opportunity that was amazing. He said, "Look, I'm gonna let you try to run your own business, but I want you to stay on as general manager. You can go to part time, keep running the operations in the company." And to be fair, like the company was running very well. He didn't have to check in. He would check in once every 2-3 months. He wouldn't even, everything was working smoothly. He didn't have to worry about things over there.
Yeah.
And so I did that, but my company worked out. It worked out well. And then a year later, I just said, "Look, I'm transitioning fully. I'm done over here." I convinced them to give the job to a guy that I had hired, brought over, which he fired, and then I brought him back under me. I actually paid for his flight ticket to come over, and
Wow.
then I said, "Oh, look, he's here already. You can just hire him back."
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
but yeah, so then that's how I transitioned into the manufacturing outsourcing realm. That was a company called Group China. From there, the guy that was working with California started moving money around, being a little shifty, and stopped paying one of the suppliers in Shenzhen for, I don't know, it was probably about 9 months. I think he owed about $3-4 million at that point. And I called him up and said, "Hey, the accounting looks wrong. There's something wrong with the books." And he got defensive. He obviously thinks engineers are only good at engineering.
Right.
We can't do math.
Right.
Like, surprise, surprise, that math is a big part of engineering. But so we anyway, I didn't want anything to do with that. I called up the companies I was interested in that we'd already started working with and said, "Look, we're separating out." And those companies came with me, and CNBSolutions kind of was started right around there, around 2005.
Got it. And you essentially just sort of branched off what you're already doing and then took on some of the business with you because there's some shady stuff going on with this.
Yeah, the company that was affected by from like the lack of payment and stuff, a company called Marion Plastics, and we were supplying all the dollar stores, Dollar General, Party City, Save a Lot. Basically, we were doing like 25 containers a week of plastic cutlery alone.
Oh, 25 containers a week.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
That's
a lot of cutlery. That's like all of U.S.
Hundreds of millions of plastic spoons, forks, and knives.
That's crazy.
So,
yeah.
It's a wild. Little known fact: America doesn't have any requirements for sanitation on plastic cutlery. It comes out of the machine, it drops on the table. It's hot out. The windows are open. There's dust flying around. The women are sitting there sorting, sweating.
Yeah.
Sweat drop on there. As long as you don't see hair or any specks inside there, it's no problem. So wash your plastic cutlery before you use it.
Luckily, I don't have to use them often, so that's disgusting. That's fortunate. Well, I've worked with CNBS before. We're a customer of CNBS, but for the viewers who may not know what CNBS does, do you mind explaining to them what kind of services you offer and who usually comes to you for the things that you guys do?
Well, we're a manufacturing company. We do engineering manufacturing, and we outsource for our manufacturing. We don't do sourcing.
Hmm.
I think the main difference between our company and what you people perceive as a sourcing company is that we actually design for products. Even if it's already a design product, we still do a design review, and we can make modifications to the production process, manufacturing, to make things more efficient, the manufacturing more efficient, or change the product itself. And we've done that a number of times. Different products, from mechanical products to electromechanical products. Our security system that we're currently is being launched in Texas right now, we completely redesigned the circuit board, the housing, everything, the entire layout of the thing completely changed in order to make it a viable product to go in the market.
I see. That's yeah. That answers it. What if it's someone new entering, starting a business? They want to create a product or they want to source something, because it seems like you tend to work with established businesses. They have their own products, and you come in and give them a solution in lowering costs or creating a better way of manufacturing, right? So what if it's someone new and they want to make something? Would you be a company that be able to help them, or
Yeah, so it's not true. I've worked with a lot of startups in the past.
okay,
The problem with startups, about 99% of them don't make it.
right,
And there's a lot of factors go into it. One, they don't understand budgeting. You see a lot of guys on Kickstarter, they get $1 million, and they spend $850,000 on hiring people. They get this big fancy office and stuff, and then suddenly when they get ready to launch a product, they don't have any money.
right,
And then they have to start going to some kind of funding. They try to get money from someone else, and invariably a lot of it doesn't happen because they haven't properly thought through their business plan, and they've already wasted money when they shouldn't have been. And there's a lot of good products on the market that fail, and there's a lot of bad products that are very successful, and that depends on the company.
how you
So
execute,
established companies are a lot easier to work with.
right,
We can still save money, but we do work with new companies, but it just has to be somebody that that makes
experience,
sense. It
yeah,
doesn't have to be experienced. They just have to be willing to listen and and they have a decent plan that they're working forward on.
yeah, and I totally understand that because I get clients, new clients, and I tend to avoid the ones that are completely new and don't really know what they're doing because, first of all, they won't really last long in the
Mm-hmm.
market, and it's a lot of work to get it going and get started. And you want to have that business run for the long term because, in the business perspective, you don't want to work on something for a couple months and not really reap the full benefits.
Right, and a lot of these guys are, like I said, they're underfunded. If you
Yeah,
and they're wanting you to pay for stuff that, or they don't understand where money is to be spent, and at the same time they're probably buying a new car because they've got some funding, and they think that's important. But then actually working on developing a prototypes and like tooling it properly and stuff, and
right.
they don't go through that process right. They're making some jumps, and it just really depends. I I like working with like new companies at the same time, but I have to set aside a certain amount of resources because I know most of the time it's not going to work out.
Yeah, and just curious, besides misallocation of resources or mismanagement of funds, what other common mistakes do you see when someone is trying to manufacture or create a new product or sourcing as well?
I think one of the biggest mistakes are they just go for whoever's pricing the lowest, and then that's the one they want to work with because that's the lowest cost company. But it, the lowest cost company doesn't mean they're actually supplying a product that's is viable and you can use.
Hmm.
And I think that's the number one mistake. They're casting out. They think they have everyone has ego, so they want to find their guy instead of working with somebody that's experienced, and then they inevitably get burned. They lose money on somewhere,
Yeah,
and then you losing not only lose money, you're losing your timeline, whatever product launch, what service that you're trying to do, all that's gone. That time is also the lost time is like much more valuable than lost money that you spent on investing in whatever that didn't work out at the same time.
yeah, and I agree with that. From the branding perspective too, if you're trying to launch a product and you come out with something that's inferior just because you chose the cheapest supplier, then your brand is done, and that could really damage everything that you've been building for a while to build this brand that people you want to resonate with.
Yeah, you can build a brand for 5 years, and it can be destroyed in one day.
Yeah.
So and people, it's your once your reputation is gone, like it's gone. People in the people who spend money and the general populace are very fickle when it comes to something like that. When you're trying to develop a brand and product, it can be destroyed. I'll give you a good example. So when COVID just started, one of the products I've been working on for a very long time is I've done a lot of single-use instrumentation. I've done forceps for vitreoretinal surgery inside the eye. I've done irrigation aspiration systems for cataract surgery for the I built a lavage, designed it, produced it. We've gone through clinical trials for a hip replacement surgery. And a lavage, for people who aren't in the medical industry, is basically, it's also irrigation aspiration. It sprays like a saline spray. It has a suction area where it's actually pulling out all the gunk and blood and stuff when they're cutting in there doing the surgery at the same time.
Oh, wow.
I used to ship tens of millions of silicone tourniquets into the National Health Service in England and a company called Vigon. Um, and I had a registered sanitation technology that I did in China. So I've been heavily involved in medical side too. Started as a hobby. Met this guy, an Irish guy on a plane, and when the engine failed, we ended up crashing into the runway. I asked him if he needed help, and he turned out I had this medical business, and so I got involved in it. So anyway, moving forward, I started producing masks, but I was going to ship it for the Hong Kong market. So I set up a separate entity for that. And then I wanted to get the masks of Mexico because Hong Kong people basically hated China. There's this big thing, anti-China stuff that was right at the end of all the protests in 2019. And so we started shipping it into Hong Kong fairly successfully. And then we got this bad shipment out of Mexico that we inspected, but they switched out the whole shipment on us.
Oh.
And when it arrived Hong Kong, it was just garbage. And we had social media posts of people showing our masks and showing that it was the wrong material. They were doing those drip tests, burn tests, and stuff. And it was videos with footprints on the mask coming out of the bag. It was horrible.
Oh my God!
And
That's
overnight,
horrible.
I had to shut down the company. I deregistered it. It was done. Everything. I had closed everything down because of that. And it was overnight. So reputation is very important.
Reputation is very important. It could take years to build and just
and
instantly.
There was no way to recover from that. There's absolutely no way.
Yeah, it would be very difficult. I don't even know. You probably have to giving out free masks to gain a good quality mask for free. Give out people.
We did.
And hope that
we
they
did.
will
I still had to finish. We still had to supply orders that we needed to close out. And I'm not just run away and just not take care of things, but it was a pretty awful experience.
Yeah, can't imagine that.
And that's from an experienced company, and it's from we did everything right. It's just a company we're dealing with is from Mexico, and they're bad people.
Damn.
I'm not gonna say any more of that.
Yeah, that's not. But it's interesting you mentioned that because in a smaller scope, I have a small business that approached me not too long ago, and they wanted to sell things on Amazon, so they went on Alibaba to source things. And as you know, Alibaba, it's majority they're not factories, they're like middlemen, resellers, right? Mm. And she would just buy a bunch of random things, not even large quantities, maybe 100 units, try things out. And it was like a 25% return rate. Because first of all, like when you buy something that small and you're new, a lot of times they give you rejects because they know that you're probably not going to buy again. You're not a big customer. Mm-hmm. These rejects doesn't cost them anything, so might as well get rid of it. 100 units to a Chinese factory is nothing, right? So, and it just decimated business. She lost money. She had to pay for shipping. Shipping costs more than the products itself, mm-hmm. right? And then with the returns, like the FBA fees, like she lost money.
I mean, that's why they do that, because you're paying more for shipping. By the time it gets there, for the 100 units that you bought for that specific product, are you going to go all the trouble, spend weeks on end trying to get, I don't know, $1,000 back or $500 back?
Yeah,
you're not going to do that.
No.
But I mean, one of the main things I always say is that I never touch anybody off Alibaba, made in China, any of these sites,
right?
Because invariably they're middlemen.
Mm-hmm.
You're not dealing directly with the factory. and so then you're not actually properly represented from like the people who are actually producing the product.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we have our own team sourcing things, and you have obviously your team there that we go through as well when we make things that are more intricate and complicated. And that's usually the best way to go. I mean, I always seen bad results when you source things on those websites, and most of the time it just comes out crap, or it's not QC'd at all. It's sometimes it's not the right thing. It's just so many issues associated with it, and usually I would say just avoid it. But what's next for CNBS? Anything new or exciting that's coming out you guys are working on?
And we're working on an interesting project for the Florida Highway Patrol. So GPS tracking system for it's a harm reduction product to reduce or eliminate high-speed pursuits. We're hoping we're making some progress in 2025. We did preliminary launch a fentanyl testing program last year. That kind of died down, but we're going to renew it this year. But I think it's going to be mostly with the federal government. So we'll see where that goes. Not this year, next year. In
Awesome.
A few days.
That's very interesting projects.
That's also harm reduction. It's just to try to get reduce the deaths, fentanyl deaths that's happening in the United States right now. And high speed pursuits, of course, you deal with collateral damage. Insurance costs go up when you're chasing somebody down. You got to run them off the road, and you never. I think the United States is one of the only countries in the world that actually does that. Everybody else just like they take off.
Yeah, we'll send you a ticket.
Yeah, we have cameras. We'll just show up at your house and wait for you.
Right. Well,
so
that's cool. And where can people look for you?
Well, I don't really advertise a lot, but our website is still www.cnbsolutions.com. Actually stands for China Business Solutions. So the CNB stands for China Business, or China, and then Solutions, so it's China Business Solutions.com.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Interesting person for sure, and I always love to have you around, and we'll be glad to have you back when we have a proper setup. And thank everyone for joining us for the very first happy hour show. It's a work in progress, something new that we are trying out, and we promise you that in 2025 we'll have a better studio, better setup, and to give you a better experience.
It's already pretty good.
So thank you all for joining us, and hope you check us out again. See ya.